Name me a single objective we've ever set out to accomplish that we failed on. Name me one.
Well, how about legalization of cannabis, or that election claim that you made that you were going to cure cancer? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there that are very curious about that one. My name's Drew Smith, and this is We Talk Freely. And I just give my opinions about the news that's been happening for the past couple days. We did an episode this past Monday, and here we are today. It's Wednesday, the 16th, 2023. So, a lot's been going on in the news. If you were paying attention to most of our news feeds, you'll see that everyone's been talking about the Hawaii fires and a little bit about the Trump indictments, just a little bit. Got a lot of information going on with that. As I'm figuring things out, I had to reset my OBS and all that fun stuff. So all my keys are messed up, and I'm loving it. Thank you, Windows Update. But finally, Joe Biden announced that he's going to be going to Hawaii to survey the damages. This article I found earlier today by Daily Mail says it exactly like I did. Finally, White House announces President and First Lady Jill will visit Hawaii on Monday as Karine Jean-Pierre defends his inaction on Maui wildfire. My question is, and honestly, why didn't he immediately come out and say something about it? It's really, really not a difficult issue to talk about. You just come out and you say, hey, it's horrible what's happening in Hawaii. We're going to send help to the people down there. We're going to get resources to the people who need them. But as we've seen, he's completely stepped away from making comment on the issue. Like, completely hid away from it. I'm curious why one of the first things, why didn't he first, I should say, declare that he's going to send like National Guard down there, or he's going to send aid down there? Why didn't he come out to say this? And it just seems wild to me. I could speculate on so many other people's different takes, but honestly put, it just seems wild. Our president is the person who's supposed to lead the charge in anything that's going on. He's kind of like responsible for everything that happens in the country. I know he didn't start the fire or anything of that nature, but when something goes down, the first person we look to is the leader. So, according to this article, they claim that they're going to be heading out on the 21st to go check it out. At that point, it's a far aftermath issue. I haven't seen any major claims in this article or any other article of what he's actually going to do, other than send a little bit of financial aid down there. But I think the people need more action than just financial aid. It's very concerning, but my heart goes out to everyone there in Hawaii that's suffering from this. I hope the crime is staying low. I reported in the last episode that I was seeing news reports stating that looting had already started. To me, that just drives me crazy, But I have seen some interesting success stories. There was a woman who was on her boat and watched from a distance, and luckily she was safe. And the death toll has not climbed tremendously since my last report in the past 48 hours. It has risen above 100. I've seen reports between 103 and 107. I'll definitely update more as I find out more on that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about further from Biden's lack of involvement is I wanted to follow up on what I was talking about with the electrical fires that could possibly be the link to what started this whole thing. I've seen a few different reports, and I found one cell phone video recently At the beginning, before it all went down, somebody had reported downed electrical lines and took videos of like grass fires and things starting. Once I can verify that that's actually it, I'll definitely bring a report here. But it's looking like I was right in my first report. It looks like the hurricane force winds taking down some parts of the electrical grid, creating a lot of spark fires. Looks like that was the main culprit to this whole issue. So now, as you see here on the screen, Hawaii utility companies face lawsuit amid Maui fires over downed energized power lines. Let's see here. I think this is from, this is from the Post Millennial here. There's 3 different law firms from reading this article, and you should definitely go to the Post Millennial and check this out, that are looking to take action in a class action lawsuit against the power company there in Hawaii. And, you know, in my personal opinion, this is tough. This is really tough. Like, what are they going to sue for here? They kept the power on because people's safety requires electricity, especially in a place like Hawaii. It's not like a really neutral temperature where it's like nice and cool outside and you know, whatever. You know, like I touched on, people have medications or medical conditions that they have to be wary of. But from what the article says is that they weren't turning power off in zones where reports of down power lines were happening. Now that could be an issue. You know, I used to be a volunteer in the fire department, and I do know it takes a little bit of time to get somebody out there to cut the power. It's not like there's some like master switchboard that has every single sector of power. At least as far as my knowledge goes, it has to be manually cut somewhere. But I'm not an electrician. I don't know a high voltage electrician or anything of that sort. So I don't know exactly how it operates, but I'm pretty sure that it has something to do with it. It's a tough call, and unfortunately it just ended up leading to massive disaster. It's real tough. And like I said yesterday, I shouldn't be making copies of my own links here. One of the best things that I'm hearing out of this, though, is the Hawaii governor, Josh Green, has issued a warning to investors and realtors that have approached the island to pounce on this negative situation. Like, how horrible is it that people are still currently in the middle, right now, putting out the last of the fires, and you already have people trying to come in and purchase the husks of all these properties that were taken down? That seems rough, man. Like, not even going to wait until the disaster is over with. Like, are people really that hungry? Now, I heard and I reported that Oprah went down there, and a lot of people on my feed are starting to jump at her and even say that she's one of those people that were trying to scoop up properties in the wake of this disaster. Awful. I hope that's not true. I hope every bit of that assumption there is completely false. But I have a feeling it's not. So this article here from Newsweek is basically touching on what Josh Green was talking about. And I'll recap here. Hawaii Governor Josh Green issued a warning to investors and realtors that have approached Maui residents in an effort to purchase their land that has been damaged by the devastating wildfires on the island. I've reached out to the Attorney General to explore options to do a moratorium on any sales of properties that have been damaged or destroyed. In this situation, it would be awful because you know these people aren't coming in and giving the full market value price on the property as if the property was in good shape. Now, if these wealthy investors were coming in and saying, hey, we'll give you what the property was worth before everything happened, maybe there's some tolerance there. Maybe. Because this is going to be a very, very expensive issue, even if you have insurance to recover. On top of that, there's a lot of loss. So at a bare minimum, I would expect to see something like, we'll give you full market value plus moving compensation and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it just becomes a big old cash grab, and you have a bunch of piranhas coming in and just trying to eat up the victims of this horrible disaster. And we're still trying to find people. From what I'm hearing, the unaccounted count has gone up to about 1,300, depending on the report that you're looking at. So at least plus 1,000 people still unaccounted for. Now, I know that a lot of these properties are vacation properties, and I'm fingers crossed hoping that a lot of these properties were vacant and that a lot of people weren't there in Hawaii when all of this went down. But it's tragic. Hopefully, like I said, I'm just hoping that these people will be found. Hopefully they'll be found somewhere in like Utah and here in Georgia at their normal homes. And I pray that the rescue workers with the cadaver dogs that I saw running around won't find many more people. For good reason. But I do want to give kudos to Governor Josh Green for standing up as fast as possible. That was actually a pretty quick response to make a statement on this whole thing. So I'm going to give him major kudos for standing up and protecting the people, protecting this disaster from going any further and getting any more disgusting. So another thing that I was noticing, though, as I was going through my feeds and everything in the past couple days, I've seen a lot of conspiracy theories in this whole thing. My favorite being the quote Jewish space lasers. Why do they gotta be Jewish, guys? Come on. But I digress on that point. But there is rumors of Chinese satellites. We did see a couple months ago that there was these random green lasers that were coming down on the beach of Hawaii and things of that. No, this does not, and I'm no pro or anything like that, but I mean, come on, jumping to the theory that it's space lasers of any kind, any religious nationality or anything of that, that's wild. I mean, that's kind of like going out there with the whole lizard people conspiracy thing, and it's fantasy land talk. There's nothing to that. I really doubt that China or any of our adversaries would go through the effort to attack Maui. You put your military hat on, and it's just like, what's the strategic value to light up Maui and not even send any troops or any kind of people in to actually take this place in Hawaii? Do we see any kind of boats off the coast? Do we see any kind of enemy or, non-allied aircraft in the area? Do we see any kind of military movement upon this island? Now, this time, I'm not seeing anything. So why would they just randomly shoot lasers down on Hawaii? Makes no sense. I mean, unless you've got some kind of dictator that's just really upset with those little flowery shirts and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. And so we got to reel it back to reality. That it may be man-made, from the electrical fires and things like that, but it's not, I'm not seeing a militaristic, intentional design behind this. There's no point in it. And so we got to move on from weird, crazy theories like that and bring it back to reality. So my point of bringing that up was that climate change was another one of the many theories that people have been throwing out there. And I kind of want to push back on that quite a bit. Climate change can have an effect. If climate change is really a big issue that leans into this, I'm not going to make a stance one way or another on it. We need to look at the effects and the people that are actually influencing it. Reuters, back in June 1st, actually put out a very, very tough article. There's been a lot of countries that have been pledging a lot of money. And in this article, they describe about how climate change money has been misappropriated heavily. Wealthy countries have pledged $100 billion a year to help reduce the effects of global warming. But Reuters found large sums going to projects including a coal plant, a hotel, and chocolate shops. When we're contributing to things like this, like when we're trying to help the world, we're trying to help fight against climate change or global warming or whatever initiative it is, we've got to be careful where this money is going. A lot of this money it seems to be, call it a conspiracy theory, but I'm with Reuters on this. It seems to be going to personal projects, not to the sources that it's supposed to be going to. So in this article, they describe it a little bit further. Italy helped retailer open a chocolate and gelato stores across Asia. The United States offered a loan for coastal hotel expansion in Haiti. Belgium backed the film La Tierra Roja, a love story set in Argentine rainforest. And Japan is financing a new coal plant in Bangladesh and an airport expansion in Egypt. I mean, come on. That last part right there. A new coal plant and an airport expansion. So according to the climate activists, airplanes, cars, anything with a combustion engine, that's what's causing our climate change. And your climate change repair money, I guess you could call it, is going directly into the sources of climate change. This is why you saw so many conservatives and Republicans and independents and a lot of other people a few years ago when Trump had pulled us out of the Paris Accord. This is why a lot of them agreed with Trump on that. They did not believe that the money was actually going to fight climate change. They believed that it was actually going into sources that contributed to climate change. It's not helping anybody. It's not helping anything. It's helping, correction. It is helping people at the top to get richer than ever before. How does this hotel or this movie that's being shot or opening chocolate and gelato stores, how does that help regulate the world's temperatures? I don't see it. Meanwhile, I agree with my friends on the left that we got to do something about these plastic islands, these floating collections of trash that are out in the middle of the ocean. Things like that we can physically touch, we can see, we can actually get involved with. Those kinds of projects are relatively being ignored, especially in the mainstream media. But they're not actually doing anything about it. Somehow, paying extra money towards a carbon tax or forget what it is, carbon credits and things like that, that's going to help the temperature. But you have companies that have billion-dollar profit margins that are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is a drop in the bucket, to allow them to pollute more. And somehow our green friends, our green activist friends, believe that that's a good way to go. And I'm seeing over in the UK and in other places around the world, we've got these people that are literally blocking up streets to protest oil companies and things like that. Meanwhile, they stop cars sitting in the middle of the street, idling, burning more and more and more fuel, adding more carbon to the air and more chemicals to the air, and they're driving up the demand for oil because these cars that are sitting there wasting gas now have to make more trips to the gas station. A lot of this stuff is shooting itself in the foot, punching itself in the face, whatever you want to say. This is not working out. As the article goes on to say, and sorry about the little bit of a rant there, funding for the 5 projects totaled $2.6 billion. $2.6 billion. You know how much cleanup effort that could have gone towards? I wonder how much of those plastic floating islands could have been completely wiped out with $2.6 billion. All four countries counted their backing and so-called climate finance grants, loans, bonds, equity investments, and other contributions meant to help developing nations reduce emissions and adapt to a warming world. How does chocolate and gelato do that? To my friends on the left, I gotta ask you, do you feel good about where your money is going when you contribute to these projects? When you see articles like this come up, do you really believe that these politicians, these fat cat people, do you really believe that they are working in your best interest? You know, at least when people talk about expanding like coal power and things like that, they're being honest about it. And coal power has been regulated for so long that if you actually Google up some of the photos of coal power plants, you'll see that the environment around them is flourishing. We've done a lot of work in that power sector, and I think we need to kind of go back to it and see what we can do to continue its growth, continue to make it cleaner. Because when we look at things like nuclear power, for instance, right now, you know, what was it, in Japan I think it was, where the nuclear power plant melted down 10, 12 years ago from the earthquake. Now they're talking about having to dump the water that they've been trying to treat, which they have not fully successfully treated. They're looking to dump it in our Pacific Ocean. Do you think that nuclear power is the route to go with that kind of a catastrophe behind it? Yes, nuclear power is less likely to fail, but less likely doesn't mean that it's not going to fail. And we see when it does fail, the disastrous outcomes from it. We're still feeling that power plant's effects over a decade later. And let's look at the windmills, the solar collectors, and things, and other projects like that. The windmills, they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but they're very ineffective. There's animal species that have been hurt. Whether it's birds or whales, we have reports all over the place that there's animals that are harmed or patterns have been completely disrupted. And those windmills still haven't proved to be as efficient as other sources of power. And efficiency is really important, because if you have to keep plopping down more and more and more and more windmills, what are we doing in the back end? Well, all the materials required to make these windmills right now with our current technologies are highly dependent on diesel run engines. You got trucks and cranes and different apparatuses that require burning of fossil fuels just to build these things. Like, have you watched the foundation of one single windmill get built? Have you seen all the vehicles that are doing this? Yeah, it'd be nice to switch everything over to electricity. However, there's no construction company out there with that level of wealth that can buy equipment that is all electric that can actually do the work that needs to be done. A lot of it also requires helicopters to do a lot of work on this stuff. So there's something else that's just belching out fuel. The collection of the resources, whether it's the concrete at the bottom, the steel in the middle and the top, or the fiberglass that's also put into all of this, all those resources require more and more and more pollution producing practices. So by the time you have this one windmill up, you've already created a massive amount of pollution to get it done. Then on top of that, to lubricate this windmill, you have to use oil. So while our climate activist friends are out there blocking streets and stuff like that to prevent the use of oil, if you want to use wind power, you need oil. And there's no way around it. There's no other lubricants. Unless you're trying to maybe slaughter a bunch of animals and use animal fats for it, but that's wildly inefficient. I don't see a win at any end of wind power. It's cool, don't get me wrong, just this big old fan spinning, catching ocean current winds, I know here at the beaches here in Georgia, man, it gets windy out there sometimes. It seems like a great idea when you're standing there on the beach thinking about it. But if you go Google up some of these wind farms on beaches and coastlines, does that really look like a good solution? Dozens and dozens of these giant towers just sitting there spinning these giant blades. And then what do you see at the bottom of these blades? Not really on the pictures of Google, but I've heard a lot of my animal loving friends, they've come out and talked about it. There's a lot of animal carcasses down there. A lot of birds that try to fly through it, and they end up getting whacked by the blades. It's tragic. What about the endangered species that are flying around that? It's not good. And then what happens when inevitability happens and there's a breakdown? Even the best windmills, the best, are going to break down from time to time because of weather patterns, just overall inefficiencies, whatever it is. There are breakdowns. And these things leak gallons upon gallons upon gallons of oil. Where's that oil going? All over the ground for lots of wildlife to have to deal with. Some years ago, we were up in arms against each other, left and right, all talking about how these pipelines going across the United States map were a danger to the environment because if they crack open, the animals are going to get harmed. Well, instead of it being a pipeline that can just be quickly shut off, now we have a windmill system that's dropping oil in all kinds of locations. Which brings me to another point. When we cut off those pipelines, how do you think we're getting the oil here to the States now? Do you think it just magically appears at some kind of refining plant? No. Now we're buying our oil out of the Middle East, from Russia, from all kinds of different places, and they are sending it on ships. Now, some of you may not be old enough to remember, but, I was a kid in the 90s and in the 80s, kind of showing my age here. And I remember all the horrific oil spills. I remember all the ships that would run up on land because of, either bad weather or poor navigation. Just a lot of it was human error. And all this stuff just gets dumped out into the oceans. I remember, the big Gulf oil spill. What was it, the BP one where the line busted and just started dumping oil into the Gulf. And there was horrific photos everywhere, videos, birds and all kinds of animals just covered in this oil, dying from it. Why did we go back there? We had a setup where we were pulling oil and we were shipping it through pipes. And if there was ever a disaster to happen, it would be highly localized. And these pipe systems actually have pressure monitors, so if the pressure drops, they just shut off. Very little damage, very little environmental harm. But a big old ship that starts to sink in the ocean, there's no emergency cutoff for that. That oil goes everywhere. And you got to deal with hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil just everywhere. It all seems like a punch in the face. You know, I mentioned solar earlier too. Solar is really cool. When I was a little kid, I got a little hobby kit that had one of these little solar panels in it, and I used to hook this little thing up to everything. Even kind of zap myself a couple of times. Like it was really efficient, really cool. Really enjoyed it. But the problem with it only works when the sun's out. And to make a solar plant or even a wind farm really efficient requires a lot of batteries. You have to store that energy as much as possible. And as you see with this electric car revolution, we are creating these massive, massive, massive lithium mines and strip mine operations all over the world. I'll let you Google the disasters that are coming out of it, but you can see some of these projects from space. And if you're not a big fan of slavery, or you're not a big fan of violations of human rights, you may want to look into that as well. Because the same violation of human rights that are happening with batteries, and the same devastation that's happening to the planet for making these batteries, also is happening with a lot of these solar panels. Furthermore, going back to how it hurts our environment, for these solar farms you have to clear out a large area, just like you would for like an industrial warehouse or something. And you have these panels that are reflecting the sun, and they're creating massive amounts of heat. That heat is no good for the local environment around there. And again, the birds are going to get it. We see that as a problem around a lot of solar plants too. A lot of these plants have to deal with birds literally falling out of the sky because the intense reflections are halfway cooking these animals. With all the heat, it also brings in non-native species into the area. A lot of bugs, insects, things like that that normally would not thrive there are now taking over in those areas, and they wipe out plants and other species of animals. So none of this really works. A lot of it looks great on the surface, but it doesn't quite work. Just like this article right here. When you rush into something with your heart, you end up with these kinds of stories where people manipulate good-hearted people, good, well-intended people. And so now you have corporations or private investors, private interests, whatever. These people are banking. They're banking on your dollar. And right now we're in an economy where you need to keep every dollar in your pocket that you can. And if you're sending it to these projects, if you're raising your taxes and having that money go into these projects, it's a waste. It's a waste for you, but it's a win for somebody else. That was a big issue back in the day, as everyone was really upset about the rich getting richer. And there was no wealth for lower class folks like myself. It's true. The wealth is being exchanged from the lower class and the middle class, and it's going straight to the top. Speaking of which, let me, there we go. There's been a lot going on, and with all those Trump charges we were talking about last time, some serious things have been getting kind of swept under the rug. Talking about the wealthy getting wealthier, this whole Hunter Biden situation where he's supposedly using his father's name as influence. I've had a few people push back on me on this one, and and I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm not trying to bury one side over the other, but I want you to consider something. If you're one of these people out there that believes that Hunter Biden wasn't using his dad's name as influence, I need you to think about this. I need you to step back from your party politics and just step back and look at the situation. So it came out that, recently, a whistleblower came out saying that Hunter would constantly in business meetings, or often in business meetings, pull out his phone and call his dad. And they wouldn't talk business, apparently. But, Biden would answer the phone. Joe Biden would answer the phone, and he'd be like, "Hi, it's me. Yeah, it's me. How are you doing?" Maybe it's not directly Joe Biden being involved in the business, but it's one of those situations where you have two people standing there, and one person is asking the other for something to happen. The other person does not want to, or is unsure, let's just say that. They're unsure if they want to be a part of that. So person A then calls in somebody much bigger to stand behind them. That is a pressuring and influencing situation. You as a business person are now confronted by the vice president at the time of the entire United States. And that vice president at the time is flexing all the stereotypical power that we've known about for a long time, all the influence that we've known about for a long time. If you guys remember, there was even movies making fun of the strength that our nation had and how we used to just throw it around wherever we wanted to. I mean, heck, that movie Team America was a big shining example of that. So you're in another country that barely holds a candle to the United States economy, and you're negotiating with business leaders over there, and you can pull the vice president of the United States out of your pocket? That makes you way bigger and way more influential. There is some illegal practice there that is using your position in the U.S. government for private interest. How many contracts do you think were changed, or actually achieved, just because of those phone calls? We see the things that Hunter Biden's involved in, whether it's, possible drugs and, the loose women, gun issues and stuff like that. If you're a businessman just face to face with Hunter Biden by himself, you're not taking him massively seriously, but the last name is there. He's a Biden. So I would assume that in the situations where Hunter actually called his dad, it's when the people he's talking to are like, "Well, you're just Biden's son." I'm assuming that. I have no evidence. So he calls his dad and says, "Oh yeah? Check this out." Boom. So what about that video where, I think it was dealing with Burisma, where Joe Biden was saying that he influenced them to fire a prosecutor? We can look at that kind of influence. Like, Joe Biden did the same thing that Hunter Biden was doing with him. Joe said, that he could influence President Obama at the time to do what he needed him to do. Just like Hunter Biden was saying that he could get Joe Biden to do the things that he wanted to. So I wanted to preface this. There's been a special prosecutor, there's been a prosecutor that's been appointed as special counsel. And the issue with this is that now the investigations that are supposed to be done for the American people can be done in private. There's going to be a lot of information, possibly, that gets squashed in all of this. You know, Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, he had a few things to say about this. And I want to bring this up. Found it on Truth Social today, and I thought this was a good find. Let's just listen to what he has to say, and we'll go from there.
About the pay-to-play for the Bidens, we didn't know all of what transpired, but what do we know now? Now, having followed and pulled on the strings, we now know that the Biden family created 20 shell companies when Joe Biden became vice president. We know that the Biden family got 16 of the 17 payments from Romania while he was still vice president. The president told us he had nothing to do with the Biden family's workings, but now we found out through the partner just last week that no, he literally called in. He had dinners, and after the dinners, the Biden family got a new Porsche. They got $3.5 million wired to them. So things seem to be happening here. We also found out where President Biden told us that his family got no money from China. We now know that, yes, they did get money from China. We now know that the FBI, from one of their most prominent informants, was warned that they were told a number of years ago that they had to bribe Joe Biden. So this just raises a lot of questions. We now know that Attorney General Garland has said one thing in the investigation of Biden, but the IRS whistleblowers say something else happened. So what we're trying to find is who lied and what are all the truths about.
I think that's a great question. Who lied and what's going on with the truth?
Another major.
Bah. There's a lot of misinformation that's been going on. Joe Biden has said over and over and over again that he had nothing to do with Hunter Biden's business dealings. Yet, they've received all those gifts. He said that he had nothing to deal with it, but then it comes out that Hunter was calling him in the middle of these business deals. Well, if he didn't want to have anything to do with those business deals, then he should have said, don't call me about your private business. Call me when you're done or something like that. But he didn't do that. You know, according to the testimonies, you know, he had polite conversations. With this special counsel being appointed, like I said, there's rife chance here for corruption. James Comer, he's got a few things to say about this as well, and I want to play them for you.
All right, so we now, David Weiss, same person, different titles. It took a long time to get the special counsel, but it's also the same guy, you correct me if I'm wrong, that was going to let Hunter Biden plead to 2 misdemeanors and put a felony gun charge in a diversion program. So how moved are you with this thirst for justice at DOJ by appointing special counsel on Friday afternoon?
Well, this is a joke. All that Merrick Garland did was validate the point that many Republicans have been making, that the Department of Justice was weaponized. Look, I've been very vocal in saying we didn't need a special counsel. I've been on the other side of a lot of my colleagues in the House. The one reason I would give for not wanting a special counsel was what we've seen. The fact that I have no confidence that Merrick Garland would appoint anyone credible. I never dreamed he would do as bad as he did with Weiss. Not only did Weiss drag his feet for 5 years and try to negotiate a sweetheart plea deal with the president's son, he also let the statute of limitations run out. That was one of the biggest complaints from the IRS whistleblowers when they testified before the Oversight Committee, was their frustration that they knew they were coming up on a hard stop as far as trying to prosecute the president's son for obvious crimes of tax evasion and violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, but Weiss intentionally let the statute of limitations run out. We also learned in that testimony, Trey, that the IRS whistleblowers never knew about the 1023 form from the FBI that Bill Barr handed over to Weiss that alleged both Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were involved in a bribery scheme in Ukraine, even though Weiss knew the IRS was investigating suspicious wire from Ukraine.
So in this, he's telling us that we've seen Weiss drag feet and completely botch up these investigations. And what kills me about this is when I talk to people about it, they're like, oh, well, they never found anything or nothing was ever prosecuted. But what ends up happening over and over again, like you said, they drag feet, they let things expire, they jam up the actual investigations, and no charges actually get pressed. This is all part of something that we continue to see over and over and over again with the Bidens. Now, we look at the past couple of days of what's been going on here in Georgia, and look at how fast and how aggressively they're pushing against Donald Trump. We've already seen, in fact, we actually saw charges come out before the jury had deliberated on the charges. We saw early leaks on it. Everybody's getting ahead of it. We're seeing a lot of corruption involved in all of this stuff. And again, it makes the rich man richer. This is very corrupt stuff, guys. And I think we need to look a little bit deeper into it. We need to pull our biases back regardless. You can hate Trump. You can hate Joe Biden. You can hate Hunter. You can hate whoever it is that you want to. But at the end of the day, we got to look at the kind of country that we're leaving for our futures. There are, our future children or our future family, however it ends up rolling out for you. 2023, things are getting kind of wild. There is no future for our country, and there is a lot of doom and gloom that's coming ahead if we continue to push for these baseless investigations and baseless charges against people who really didn't do anything wrong. David Weiss being put into place, to me, it does seem very fishy. Comer makes some points there. I'm not even the biggest fan of Comer myself. But Weiss, if he's been dragging his feet this long, then I can see exactly why Garland would put him into place. He wants to drag all these investigations out until after Joe Biden possibly gets reelected. And if you notice, the charges against Trump, they're being dragged to right before the election. They want to put Trump in jail right now. After waiting for 2.5 years. Randomly, everything's got to happen right now, right now, right now, right now. That's wild. I know if it was you or me in any kind of legal trouble, it's a manufactured process. It's like an assembly line. Go to jail, go to court, plead your case, accept or deny your charges. Judge makes a decision. You sit and spend your time, right? And it happens relatively quickly. Before you even get to that legal process, if the police are involved, they investigate as fast as possible and get that charge done. They normally don't drag it out a whole 2 years, because after about 2 years in most charges, or in a lot of charges, the statute of limitations is passed. But with Trump, 2.5 years go by. And now they come with, 91 charges of random First Amendment free speech RICO violations. All of this stuff is wild. And everything we talked about here is all about the rich getting richer off of your back, off of my back. Pin the stories together. That's the point of everything today. From the environmental stuff to what's going on in Hawaii, Joe Biden and all those charges that are going on between him and Trump, all of this, when you really track it down to the core, it's all about the rich getting richer and you and I getting poorer. But that's about all I've got to talk about on the issues today. I'll be back on day after tomorrow. I'm going to try to put up a video every other day. I've got some things that I got to work out here for the production. Today was a little bit disorganized after the Windows update wiped out all my notes and everything that I had going on. That really sucked. Microsoft, you gotta chill out. You can't force restart on people when they've done all their work and things. Now I've got to get better at saving, because goodness knows when my computer is going to restart for the next update. You know, I don't want Windows 11, by the way. No, I don't really know anybody that wants Windows 11. So that's it for the day. This show is We Talk Freely, brought to you by the Local Spin and Green Table Gaming. Definitely check us out. Green Table Gaming's on a pause right now. We will be getting some new gaming footage up there. Probably going to get back into Farming Simulator and a few other nice neutral games. The Local Spin, they put out news reports just about every day. Nice news segments giving you a little bit of information about what's going on here in the state of Georgia and even more locally in Savannah, Chatham County area. Really good information that they've got. Definitely advise checking them out. If you could, give me a like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, whatever platform you find this on, and I hope to see y'all soon.